And once again, we're back, episode 14 of the Year Buddy podcast. Your main man, Mike.
I'm Johnny.
I'm Eugene.
And today, jumping in, you heard Ishmael already jumping in there. Ishmael on the opposite side. How you doing, brother?
I'm very well. How's everybody doing?
Up and down. So I think you're the right guy to have on the pod at the moment. I think with everything that we're going through. I know you've already had a conversation with Mike, and we've got a mutual friend, Zach, that you do a little bit of training with. So I'll let you and Michael kick it off. I'm going to be quite interested and excited about this one because with everything that's been going on with lockdown and freedoms and people's state of mind, I think you're a great person to have on, mate. So let's go.
No, agreed. I think it's quite interesting that we've got, I'd class you as Mr. Mental Health at this present time, and especially with the last podcast, I sound like I was on the end of my wits. It was like game over, rooftop type stuff. So for me, as I said, it's awesome to have you on, but probably the best point to start would be, who is Ishmael?
Who is Ishmael? Do you know when whenever you ask a question, who are you? It's a broad question, You can go into so many different kind of strands about what you're about. But for me, where to start really? I suppose the best place to start is the present, and then I can delve a bit backwards and then can come back to the present again. So presently or recently, I like to associate myself with what I do for work. I think that's quite powerful. I'm in the healthcare sector, specifically at the moment, I'm in substance misuse. So you might ask, what is substance misuse? So substance misuse, addictions, drug and alcohol service, that's all the same kind of remit. And since May of last year, I've been working in a drug and alcohol service. And my role within that service is actually to help people from 25 years old and under. So I'm working with young adults and young people who have a addiction or a problem or issue with either drugs or alcohol or a combination of both. So with that, our work is to inspire them, empower them to make the correct changes for them. But what our role isn't is to force them down a route when they're actually not ready to change yet. That can be quite damaging. So that's a little bit what...
I got a question there. So does that happen quite often that in that field, some people do force people down the route of, we need you to change, rather than it's your own free will and you've decided that I've had enough of this, I need to make the commitment myself. Does that happen quite a lot?
Yes. So in my role, I'm the person who's duty to contact the young people who we have referred to the service. And you often find that they would say to me that actually this isn't something I want, and this is something that I've been advised, whether that be through my social worker or my care coordinator. This is something that's being advised. Yes, I do, for example, smoke. They may say I do, for example, smoke cannabis, and it's something I don't want to change just yet.
Whereabouts are you working at the minute? So where are you based? London?
I'm based in Slough.
In Slough, okay. And you work with the local authority?
Or drug whole service in Slough. We at the moment, that's what I've been basing myself doing, because I mean, I guess we'll talk about it later, but I feel like a purpose to just be a good example to people around me. And that can be people older, and for me, especially people who are younger than me. So I just want to show them the way, but I don't want to
force them.
Exactly. I want them to see the way, not be forced and not be themselves in having to go and be go down the right kind of route, kind of thing.
Some of the people that you come into contact with, how do you go about getting into a position of being able to speak to them if some of them aren't ready to get on the, if some of them aren't ready to start the journey to bettering themselves and stopping whatever they're doing? How does that connection come about? Because one of the notes that I'd written down, I think Michael briefly touched on it earlier, was within a family unit, is it referrals? So if you noticed a change in someone within your family or a loved one, how would you coerce that person to come and see somebody such as yourself?
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work that is done to get to that stage, actually, because you've got to realize how much of a stage it is actually be referred and actually seek out help. But often, sometimes, like you said, it's people who are being referred, so it may not be them per se seeking help, but someone seeking help for them. And actually, to answer your question, that's not a lot of work that we do, so we don't actually see that work. So I can't give you a full and valid, answer to how that work is done. But what happens is it's a stage of gauging how ready they are. That's what a lot of it comes down to. How ready are you for change?
Yeah.
How do you want to change, or is it your mum that wants you to change?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I was just nodding because it's similar to, I'm not going to say it's similar to personal training, but it is in terms of with clients. It's one of those things where your parents could pay, your auntie, your sister could pay, your boyfriend or girlfriend could pay for personal training sessions. But if you're not willing to change, we're not going anywhere. And I'm sure it's very similar with that. So
it's
how did you get into that field? I know I'm just jumping side to side here, but how did you get into that field? That's where you are now. But how did you, what was the journey that got you to the point where you are now?
So before where I am now, I was working at a psychiatric hospital in Reading. And for me, I did have kind of future plans for like a support group for people who are isolated. Because we have a lot of people in the community who are isolated, and quite severely so, and there's not much targeted towards them. So for me, I had some experience, a couple of years on working on the mental health wards, and for me to look to do something like that in the future, having mental health experience is good, but you need to have a holistic approach. And I lacked the knowledge and information and experience in substance misuse, which when you've worked in both, you'd acknowledge that there is quite a divide between the two. And I say divide in terms of treatment for people who, because it can come down to a similar situation like a chicken and egg.
Yep.
Does drugs, is it because of drugs that they're doing this behavior, or is it because they're taking drugs to block out a feeling or their perhaps symptoms of their diagnosis? And you think it would be quite collaborative, wouldn't you? Because that would help the person.
Trying to go hand in hand to agree, wouldn't it? You would have thought that.
That's what you would have thought. Still now, it's very much quite divided. Like I can lead for an example. For example, if we had a client who was open to us, and they had some mental health difficulties, but they were either consuming large amounts of alcohol still daily, or they were consuming drugs still daily, to go on to perhaps talking therapies which would help for them, they have to remain abstinent for like 6 to 12 weeks. And for someone who is dependent on either drugs or alcohol, meaning they'll have to take it or consume it daily, this means they're never going to access that service if that's a requirement. And that's where there's a big breakdown. Also with that, you'd think, okay, so they can't get access to perhaps mental health support in terms of talking therapies or something like that because of not meeting the criteria. You'd think perhaps maybe it might become the responsibility of those who work in substance misuse. But you tend to forget that substance misuse is substance misuse. That's the whole remit. The remit doesn't necessarily include mental health because we're not trained in mental health in substance whilst working in substance misuse. So there is still some work to be done there.
So what would the training differ between? So you said that they're not trained in that field, but then what would the training differ? What would be the difference, if that was a question to ask?
No, I can answer that. I can answer that in my experience. So in my experience, if you're in one of those fields, so if you're in the mental health field, you'd get little training about substance misuse. Okay. And now in substance misuse, there's little training in and around mental health. But where there's a kind of crossover is, in substance misuse anyway, is that within the treatment, there's psychosocial interventions that help some of the clients that are open with the service. So with the psychosocial interventions, it's about helping them to identify triggers, helping them to think and record stuff that they're actually consuming. And then actually with the information and harm minimization that we give to them, start to change their thinking towards and their attitudes towards substances and perhaps alcohol. And when that starts to happen, the theory is that the thinking kind of changes the behavior. And that's where the recovery happens.
And how long, I know this is probably like a throw out the question there, but how long would you say that normally takes? I know it's going to vary from person to person, but in terms of
for them to realise, Mike.
Say again?
For them to realise.
Yeah, so like the average time for someone, you know, like they said 21 days for habits and stuff like that. In terms of the field you work in, how long does that normally take for someone to realise, as Johnny just said, that they want to make this change, or they're starting to make these initial habits to kind of make that change going forward?
It's it goes right back to kind of the stuff we were talking at the beginning. With clients, especially those who want to change, that kind of penny drops
a lot sooner
at the very beginning. But it's that step from wanting to change and actually going on to do it and being equipped to do it. So it's probably more around how we equip them to go and do that, and that kind of time frame. Yes, a cop-out answer would be it varies, but there is like a treatment, how can I say, time frame. With regards to psychosocial interventions anyway, you're looking around 6 to 12 weeks. That's a broad, it's shorter than that, but that's a broad kind of time frame for that to happen if they engage.
So when someone's sitting in front of you for the first time, are they there now voluntarily, or do you also have people that are referred to you from maybe they've been arrested for something, and as part of their bail conditions or conditions of their reform, they have to come and see you? Like, did you get that as well?
Yes. So we are a voluntary service. So you're not, well, for people aside from those who perhaps are on probation or something like that, and they're on a special order from the courts that they need or they require to engage with a drug and alcohol service. And the theory behind that is to reduce crime. And by the way, that's actually the whole, or one of the biggest focuses about drug and alcohol services is actually to reduce crime in the community. And it really, when you spend time in the field, like for me, when I spent time in the field now, that really hits home. But to answer your second question as well, yes, we get referrals from prisons, so prison releases, probation teams, etc. And for them, it's more that they should really oblige with that to help. But even then, if they say, I don't wish for your support at this minute in time, then we say, okay, that's fine. You know, our service isn't going anywhere. If you do need our support in the future, please refer yourself back. And we contact the referrer and let them know of the outcome. It's an appointment only, so invitation only, shall I say, especially during lockdown. So primarily it would be clients who have just been referred and it's their first appointment that we see them face to face, or it would be the more high risk clients we would see face to face for a visual check. Aside from that, most of the communication is done over the phone.
Okay.
That's how it's been, and usually at services such as ours, you'd have groups. So you'd have like alcohol groups, for example, and you go through those psychosocial interventions week by week, and usually you'd have people come in, but we haven't had that so far. And there's actually some virtual groups that are being offered to them. The only downside to that is not everyone has that equipment, so it does restrict some people. But for those people who it does restrict, we always have the alternative where the same work that would be done in a group can actually just be done one-to-one over the phone. So, for example, a workbook would be sent out to the client and you would go through session 1 week, session 2 the next week over the phone one-to-one. So we do have that kind of measure as well.
Makes sense. So that obviously there's a process to it. I'm just thinking like, so you've got your step one. What would be an example of step one? To say you was working with myself, you've called me, how would that look? How would that sound?
What if you had just been referred to us? It's like the very beginning.
I've got my workbook sent to me. I've got it at home. You're going to call me. What am I doing? What's my first chapter? What's happening? So
you'd be looking at the kind of welcoming session. So it'll be a time to build rapport as well. Because you realize when you go into treatment, obviously you're there for treatment, but treatment works well when you have rapport with whoever you're working with. You want to build that rapport, that relationship, and being able to relate to them. And actually, you want to trust that they're actually giving you the right advice, and you want it to make sense. So the first kind of step would be in the alcohol book. It'll be over the phone, and you'd have your book. I'd have it in front of me, and I'd be reading through the kind of what the content is on the paper in the workbook. Sorry.
Is that you finding the workbook on the side?
Pardon? Yeah.
I see you like turn the page. I was like, yes, go into the book.
Yeah. So yeah, it would be around kind of identifying what is going on for you. Why is this being problematic for you? It's just about identification at this stage. So can you identify what is going on for you and why it's going on for you, and why is it bringing the substances or the alcohol? Why is the circumstances causing you to do that? So that'll be more or less the first kind of stages.
And that normally, so that first initial welcome section is what? Is that an hour call? Is it a 2-hour call? Do you have an allocated time? What's the time slot you've given to do that welcome introduction kind of bonding session?
It can vary, but you usually set aside half an hour to an hour for each session, because actually, although it may be a singular client's session, that key worker would have a fully booked diary, so they can't expand their day for one client. As much as that sounds, the key workers at the service have a full caseload, and they'll have to see to other clients as well. So it'd be about half an hour to an hour. That
resource, isn't it? So during lockdown, have you found that things have worsened and you've been busier in a sense because a lot of people need your support a lot more? Like, are you finding that? Because I think even the most hardened and stern of person at the minute will struggle at some point during this whole thing, whether it be because they're on furlough or they've gone out of business, whatever it is. So there's an awful, I would imagine, more people that are actually turning to drugs and alcohol within the last year than would normally be the case. And they might even be people that wouldn't have even contemplated it before. Yeah. Do you know, in terms of what we can measure in the service, would say that it's definitely been an increase. But when you ask that question, the first thing that popped into my head is those people who are not in contact with the service, and that bit that can't be measured. Because we got to remember that the people that come into contact with the service is very likely that they are not the only people that actually need the help. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the people who have come into the service, I haven't worked at the service very long, just under a year, but there are people who are at the service who've worked there for much longer. And in their eyes, they're quite used to knowing quite familiar names who are maybe come in and out of the service, etc., etc. But this year there's been quite a few new names for them. Mm-hmm. It suggests, more people are actually coming into the service in the last year. So I'd definitely say that there has been an increase. And the biggest thing in the service at the moment is the kind of safeguarding issues. I'll bring your attention to this because it's quite poignant. It's quite poignant in a way, because when I talk about safeguarding issues, a lot of these clients who've been referred to us, a lot of them have children. Okay. And if you're taking substances or consuming large amounts of alcohol, and you're living with the children, that can, I say can, not always, but that can raise warning bells. Because if you are consuming alcohol or a large amount of drugs and you have children at home, how are you kind of coping with that and looking after your children? Because more often than not, something's got to give. Mm-hmm. And when we become aware that they have children, we always have to do our checks. Are the children open with the social services? Do social services know about them? And if we come across any kind of risks from them, then we're looking at
doing a referral to social services.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I was going to say, my one of my sisters, my younger sister, she's a social worker, and during the whole pandemic, she has been rushed off her feet.
I imagine.
Crazy. And exactly because of what you've just said there, the safeguarding, because the children are at home and they're not in school. And you might find that you've got a stressed parent that's indulging in alcohol or substances.
Yeah.
The kid would be at school, and some of them have got the mentality and the mindset to be able to shake it off by the time they get home from school, and then start their parenting. But where they're on top of them the whole time now, it's kind of like what you said. How do they balance that out, and how do they cope with it? It's a worrying thought.
No, it's tough. It's tough. But I think you're right. Something has to give, because even you're saying that the neighbours across the way from where I'm staying, the lady and also the boyfriend she sees, I think it's a boyfriend, they're taking drugs. So a drug dealer comes up, parks the car, someone sits in the car, there's a little crossover.
Well, sorry, so Michael, man, your net curtains must be twitching, man.
Nah, we're all good. I'm a big man.
You just stand there looking.
But no, it's weird because the car pulls up and this is in the morning. It's like 10 a.m. One of them sits in the car, little handover, they go inside and you can hear the children inside and you're kind of going, that atmosphere with that going on, there's a problem. And as you said, that something's got to give. And I'm sure in that situation, there's something's going to happen. Sooner or later, if we're still in the lockdown in the next couple of months, there will be that moment where something's happened. Either they've gone upstairs, they've done their cocaine or whatever they've done, and they left the kids downstairs and something's happened to those kids. And it's terrible. Even us talking about it now makes you kind of feel a bit saddened that we're in a situation where you have parents that have children who don't put the children first. For me, that's just crazy. Absolutely crazy.
This is it. And also that as well, we 2 points really. The child is always the most vulnerable person. By law, you've got to protect the children. And the kind of behaviors from either parents or relatives in that same household, there's always going to be an impact on the children in some way. But secondly as well, actually, once a client perhaps disclose that they have children, one of our kind of go-tos is the early help hub, who can actually support them as a family. So it's actually not ever a negative, but it can be seen in a lighter way when they get support from social services, early help, to support the family in the needs that they may require. And that's one of the best things about it. Because at the time, I know most families would probably feel the same if they have a call or unannounced visit from a social worker. You'd be thinking, what the hell, why, and all this kind of stuff. But when it comes around of the whole reason and actually the children, people quickly understand, it's not to catch you, it's not to catch people out, it's to look out for people, look out for children. And that's one of the most kind of important things. Yeah,
I can imagine. I don't know, man. I find that area quite tough. For me, that kind of gets me kind of feeling a bit sad for, as you said, for the children, because it's not their fault. Being in that situation is not their fault. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. But so in terms of yourself, you didn't tell us why you chose to get into this field, though. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for the juice.
Look for the juice. It's coming.
So did you go? You went to university?
That's right. I went to the University of Worcester.
Okay.
So there, it's a lovely city. You have to visit, man. So it's near Birmingham. It's like 45 minutes from Birmingham. It's near. Where's it good? Evesham. It's near Gloucester.
Yeah, no, I've been to Gloucester.
Yeah.
I've been to Gloucester. I don't have been to the university though. But I've been to Gloucester. But go on, give us the digs. How's it here?
So yeah, uni was good. you know, looking back at it now, it just seems so short. In supported living accommodation, that's mostly where people who've been kind of discharged from hospital are trying to be independent, but they're still getting support from the staff that are there. That's the kind of whole purpose around it. So for them, it's literally just routine. Monday to Friday is this routine, and Saturday and Sunday is a bit more freer. So there wasn't actually that many stories from there, but don't worry. There's stories to come. There is stories to come. Just not from there. So that was my first experience in the kind of health and social care field / mental health field. In terms of what led me to go there, I did a psychology degree, but I wasn't looking to go down the route of being a psychologist. I wanted to have more of a face-to-face impact on people's kind of lives. I wanted to speak with people. I wanted to support people. Wanted to care for people. And whilst working there, it taught me how to interact with different types of people with different types of presentations. For example, when you're working with someone with learning disabilities, you, as well as sometimes they may have difficulties communicating, you have to adapt how you communicate to them. And that in itself is a skill. Because if you don't communicate something in the right or best way for a particular person, it could spark all sorts of things. It could spark them to be upset, angry, all these kind of things. So you have to learn to speak to people with different presentations, and that was the start of learning how to do that.
I was going to say, because I used to live in the YMCA when I was younger, and I had a number of social workers and care officers.
Yeah,
we had curfew. I think we had to be in before 11, or they locked the doors. I can't remember now. Yeah. But there were a number of them that I didn't get on with because of me, looking back. But at the time, I thought it was them. You're an idiot. Stop talking to me. Go away. Piss off. Not interested. Yeah. You can't help me. Don't care. You know. And then this guy joined, and he was on the front desk, and then just instantly clicked. Yeah. And then I just thought to myself, he made me realize that it was me without even putting any pressure on me. And kind of, he wasn't my friend. He didn't try to be my friend. It's just that every time I walked past him, he had something to say. How you doing? Even when I ignored it, next time, how you doing? And then constantly. And I just thought one day I stopped and I started talking to him, and then completely changed my outlook on everything. And then, funnily enough, we lost touch. Obviously lost touch because I left, but I think so that would have been like 19 years ago. And then randomly we reconnected about 12 months ago. I know. We were in the same group, WhatsApp group, and he said, "Are you?" And I was like, "Are you?" And then we kind of like reconnected. But that whole communication piece, I get that. So you can't. You don't want people to lose interest. So you have to be everybody's, I don't know, guardian, friend. You have to be stern at times. You have to be jovial at times. And it's about balancing that up, I suppose, isn't it? So your understanding of what people's psyche is, I would say you've got an acute understanding of how to tap into that. And is that the sort of skill set that you learned from university? Is that something that you've always had in yourself?
I think that's something I've kind of always had in myself. I'll tell you why. At the moment, I can only speak up until this point, and at the moment, what I learned in my degree probably, how can I put this? What I learned from my degree probably isn't the reason for where I am today. I think my degree might help me in terms of job applications, but in terms of what's in me, that I didn't learn from the degree. I can actually now take you a little bit back actually to where that's probably come from. It's the delivery of it.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is there's a structure, isn't there? There's a structure to the process.
100%. Yeah. And they would, and more to the specific point, they would know how to deliver that advice depending on who would come and visit.
Yeah.
And for me, that at a young age, I kind of knew one of the first lessons is you really can't, there really isn't a one size fits all.
Yeah.
I learned that from a very, very young age. For instance, there's certain things you could talk with some people that you can't talk with others, kind of thing. And there's certain ways you can give feedback to some people and you can't give that same type of feedback to other people in that same way. You'd have to adjust it. And I feel from that kind of young age, I kind of took that into school.
Doing things when I was younger that I just knew I've messed up and I've got something coming to me. Mm-hmm. And you take the licks, mm-hmm. and then you move on, and then breakfast the next day, everybody loves each other again. But it's kind of like now, again, even with the safeguarding that we were talking about earlier, that's not really something that can run anymore. And if people catch wind of it, i.e., for instance, even if a kid goes to school and says, "Oh, my dad hit me last night," but it wasn't like that. They were joking, and depending on how it's delivered by the child, they might find that they've got social services knocking on their door, and it wasn't anything serious. It was, we were playing, and that must happen quite a lot.
Absolutely. It's not the same. It's definitely not the same.
The reason I say that is because what I was going to ask you is mental health and the way it's viewed back in the day as well has radically changed as to where we are today, because there's an awful, especially living in England as well, stiff upper lip, as they say. It's kind of like grin and bear it, get on with it. But in actuality, people really need help. So it's kind of like, why do you think that's changed? Like, how do you think it's come about? What's forced the change? Is it because people have, like yourself, have grown up and now you're the person that's pushing the emphasis? Look, we need to take care of these people. We need to understand why they're like that. Whereas the previous generation, more time people would have just said, look, there's something wrong with him. And if he gets into trouble, that's on him.
That's a big question. I feel the difference. I think the difference is, as plainly as it sounds, people just talk more, and maybe that question is asked more with regards to, would you like to talk about it? What is it that's going on for you, etc., etc. I also think that it is championed quite a lot. And obviously what helps nowadays compared to a generation ago, shall we say, is what we're on now, technology and social media. The very fact that there can be campaigns, there can be, shall we say, influencers who can channel that message around your mental health, and actually it's something you should address. I feel that those are kind of the big things. I'm not too sure I couldn't necessarily speak for the generation above mine, and what might have been the kind of barrier in terms of opening up for your mental health kind of thing. But in a positive light, I'm glad that it's actually not just our generation, it's everyone is opening up now. That is the most positive thing, that mental health, everyone's opening up more now than before. And it can only be more and more. I would like to hope that people do that, because
no, I agree with you on that, because even the stuff you guys both of you just spoke about there, for me, if I was able to talk when I was 16, 17 about things, I'm sure things would have ended up quite differently for me, because, you know, I went through a really chaotic time and I didn't really have anyone to talk to, got kicked out and suicide thoughts and all the other stuff, and I didn't have anyone to talk to. And anyone that I spoke to would tell me that, you're crazy. What's wrong with you? Pick yourself up, you know, rather than let's sit down, let's discuss what's going on, help me, you know, give me that support. And I think you're right, with the technology now, it makes a massive difference. You know, I could have sat in my room, rather than thinking of jumping somewhere, I could have then jumped online, messaged someone, and before you know, you have a conversation. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the way things will go going forward from now. And I think we're actually in a good place, especially as a guy. I know that we are pushing so many campaigns for fathers, for men, you know, to kind of check on their mental health. And I think it can only get better as long as we carry on having the communication channels like this, and just having stuff on the radio and on the TV to kind of highlight these issues. It can only get better. So I just wish I could go back a bit. Just listen to this conversation. I wish to go back, because for me, there were so many opportunities that I missed out on, you know, to have someone to talk to, or someone to put an arm around me and say, look, I'm checking in on you to see if everything's all right, rather than you just spiraling down a dark road, which just seems like there will be an end at some point, and you're on that route to that end. So yeah, so no, it's interesting. I'm sitting here with just flashbacks. We're talking.
My question now is, at that time, you did say a lot of that there wasn't necessarily people around that you could talk to back at that time. And I don't, when I ask this question, I kind of mean it on two kind of ways. But if there was someone to speak to, how do you think it would have went back then?
It depends on how they would approach the situation. So if they would have, as you've said, how you guys operate, especially what you're doing at current, the stage process, if it was like that, it would have encouraged me to speak. Because at the time, 16, 17, I was being bullied, I was overweight, miserable. I didn't want to talk to anyone about anything. So obviously, there would have to be some sort of structure. It would be very much of you kind of holding my hand and walking me gently down the road for me to open out. But I think from having someone to talk to would have changed the outlook on the situation, and it would have probably stopped me getting to that kind of that crescendo of peace, which happened, you know, when you're about to do something where that's it, existence is over. So it would have stopped me well away from getting to that point. And it would have saved me some better experiences in life than the experiences I had. Those couple of years were just, horrendous. I hope that answers the question. I don't know if I answered it to the best. I kind of went off tangent, but tell me if I did answer. If not, I can give it another try. I don't mind.
No, you did. Working in the mental health field, I'll tell you that most questions you ask, it's never a straightforward answer. They're all broad when it comes to mental health. They all are.
Because they get too deep, I get emotional on the Zoom, and that's not a good look. Breakdown. I mean, part 2 of just breakdown.
Yeah. I mean, let's have it. I mean, for me, when I was working on the wards, I'd be asking the patients these questions. I would usually be the one asking the questions to really try to get to the root of where the kind of issue is, if the client presents like that. But just skipping a little bit ahead a bit, there are there are different sectors of mental health. So you may have a mood disorder. So it may be anxiety, depression, etc., bipolar, or it may be down another route where they may be psychotic. And that's something that's those experiences of speaking with people who are floridly psychotic. Think I can look back on it now because that's not something I'm in contact with day to day kind of thing, and it's and at the time I wouldn't think nothing of it, but it kind of comes back to that point of learning how to deliver information to people, different types of people, and speaking with someone who's floridly psychotic. You have to be A, crystal clear, B, you have to be firm, and C, you do have to repeat yourself. Because someone who's kind of psychotic their imagination and what's going on for them could be in many different realms.
Have you ever had a bad incident whereby you've been trying to do your job and it's just completely negative and they've reacted and tried to, I don't know, attack you, or it's just gone really bad?
So I have many stories, not necessarily of being attacked, but I've not been attacked, I believe, for one reason and one reason only. So in 2018 now, so this is after I worked in a supported living accommodation, I studied doing a postgraduate diploma in mental health practice. Mm-hmm. And what that meant is there was time in the year studying at uni, and there was time in the year going on placement. And my first placement is a placement I'll never forget in my whole entire life. I worked in a medium secure forensic hospital, mm-hmm. In Enfield. Big up their ward manager.
I was going to say big up the Enfield Massive. I was like, what?
There's one thing that will save your bacon each and every time, and that's called relational security. So with relational security, that's about building that therapeutic relationship with the client, with the patient, enough so you know them well enough so that at times in need, you know what to do to help them. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll give you here's where the stories can start to realm off. I'll give you one perfect example. So on the ward, there was a nurse in charge on the ward. And at this point in time, we had a patient who was manic. And what manic is when they are super high in terms of energy. They can't rest. They are here, there, and everywhere, can't concentrate on anything. They will be walking around. They'll do extravagant things. Little sleep. These are kind of some of the characteristics of someone who's manic. And this patient who is manic started to become a little bit aggressive. Mm-hmm. Now, this isn't my personal example, but I was there. This nurse actually had a good rapport with another patient on the ward. We'll call the manic patient patient A, and we'll call the other patient who had a good relationship with the nurse patient B. Our patient A, like I said, started to become aggressive, and of course, when your nurses and support workers on the ward, you want to kind of de-escalate the situation. Of course, when that particular client was at the height of his mania, de-escalation wasn't working. De-escalation was not working, and there was a problem. He was becoming more verbally aggressive and becoming closer to the nurse in charge at the time.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, patient B was in the background, just around, just seeing what's going on. And as patient A was getting closer, patient B was getting closer. It got to the point where patient B stood in front of the nurse in charge to ensure nothing was going to happen to the nurse in charge, because he was seeing the danger that she was in. And there's only, well, I like to think there's only one reason at wards, and that's the relational security the nurse in charge had with patient B. Now, what I didn't tell you is the kind of nature of the patients on the ward. The patients that were on the ward were national newspaper worthy. They were quite dangerous people.
Mm-hmm.
So having someone very dangerous coming towards a female nurse in charge, you can only imagine a disaster. And for that patient B to, you can almost say, disregard that and actually be prepared to put himself in the firing line in front of her, that is a prime product of relational security.
So what's the, you say relational security, so is that a case of this nurse spending time with the patients and just speaking to them on a level, the weather's nice, what football team do you support, what music do you like, etc., and not speaking to them about any of their issues? It's just simply, how are you, and then building up that relationship?
It's both. It's both. It's putting on all them different types of hats. So you're putting on a nurse hat, not necessarily a friend hat, but a relationship security hat. Therapeutic relationship hat. Mm-hmm. Where, like you said earlier, with some of those who were at the desk at YMCA, they weren't your friends,
mm-hmm.
but they were there. They'll ask you how you are. They keep building that up to that point where you both know what kind of level you're on. And in that type of environment, that saves your bacon every single time. So I can give you an example of some of the sorts of cases these patients had in the ward, just to give you a flavor. So, for example, patient A, who was the manic one, he, during his mania, it was like a roadside incident where essentially, you know, when you're like, you have your road rage and stuff like that. The road rage ended up in a murder.
I know who you're talking about.
The road rage turned into a murder.
Hey.
What was that? Someone knows the guy? What's going on?
No, he's, Ishmael said newsworthy, and then he's just explained the situation, and I've just like, yeah, I know who that is.
Okay,
I can't remember his name though. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's no one we know. That's what I mean. It's I would say celebrity, man. Someone is famous now. What would you call it? Infamous?
Now, this guy wasn't infamous, but the patient. What's interesting is the patient. Patient B was actually. Can you say prosecuted? Had a case for a hoax of acts of terrorism at a national airport. So some of the nature of these clients were serious.
So what's the situation with patient B stepping in front of patient A in between the nurse? What's your position in all of this? And is security, what's the situation with security? Do they jump in, or how does it all unfold?
So it didn't need to. That's the whole premise of the relational security, is that you don't have to put your hands on anyone. That's, I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly, but it's because of that security, that rapport you have with the client, that you're almost prepared to do anything for them because they're looking out for you so much.
But worst case scenario, if he didn't get there in time and patient A got there before he did, do you have security in there, or is it, how does that work?
Everyone's there. You have to be trained to do PMVA. So that's kind of managing kind of violence and aggressive behavior, essentially. So you'd be trained if you need to put hands on, essentially, and secure the patient. But I didn't do that so much in that placement because I was a student then, so we wasn't allowed to be involved with that. And actually, when I was on the ward, I didn't actually see it. And thinking back on it now, I know I mention it a lot, but I didn't really see it because everyone on the ward knows how to build that rapport with the patients on the ward for that not to happen frequently.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, I get that. Moving on a little bit now, so we come all the way into the future because I'm conscious of time. But something that I wanted to talk to you about is your training regime at the moment, and how that helps you with your mindset and your mind frame. So I don't know if you suffered from mental health yourself or you've ever had to speak to people, but like you say, it affects people in different ways. And I often find two places for me. So I can be in a bad mood, but as soon as I get on the football pitch, done. I don't think about anything. All I think about is who I'm passing to, and it's just freedom. And then secondly, at the gym, and I don't know if Michael feels the same way about that.
Yeah, of course. Gym all day, every day.
Yeah, I mean, Eugene will have his safe places, but with you, do you get rid of a lot of anxiety or the troubles that you go through at work and the stuff that you see at work? Do you find that training helps you with a release of all of that and like washes it off of you, if that makes sense?
Yes, it does make sense. I believe that for me coming into substance misuse, it's very good for both learning new habits and unlearning old habits. It's very much the same principle like you touched on earlier, Michael, with if you don't want the help, if clients don't want to help and don't want to put it in, you're not going to get the results, kind of thing. And it's that very principle of actually wanting to make a change. So for me, I am still on a weight loss journey. And for me, that very same principle of, do I want to make a change? I do want to make a change. And that's why I did make a change. Training, I didn't have a kind of routine with training before last year. at all. I'll go for 2 weeks. I'll be like, yeah, kind of getting tick now. Need to stop. But
yes, man.
but I could never have got myself in that routine. But what I found actually working at the service is that it's helped me build that routine in my mind, that I have to do it with my mind and I have to give it my all of my mind. And you just reap all the benefits when you start training, because as well as reinforcing that kind of mentality, you are releasing the stresses from work. You are all of that. And like you said, when you're on the pitch, you're only really thinking about who you're going to pass to, when I'm going to next get it in the top bins. That's all. That's what you're going to be thinking about.
Not for a while.
This is it. And for me, all I'm thinking about is, gosh, he's making me do another 10 burpees. Good grief, man. But that's all I'm thinking. And I'd rather think about that. And when I finished every session, I would just feel like a good release.
Yeah, it was serotonin release. But that's what I'm saying. It's good for me. I'm a massive advocate of the gym, massive advocate of training. For me, it's an avenue to, as you said, distract you from the situation, give you a place to focus on yourself, an opportunity to grow, get better. If you stick with it, it's win-win. It's all win-win. But I'm saying that we did touch upon football. What team do you support, big man?
There's only one team in the land I could ever possibly support. I might have to jig the camera just a little bit. Hopefully I've got a steady hand. But it's got to be Arsenal.
The Henry.
Yeah, that's the Thierry Henry stuff.
Classic stuff, man. That's it. You take that shit. That's it. That's what. No, of course.
So what's your thoughts of the mighty Arsenal at present? What's your thoughts? Where are you sitting? What camp are you sitting in?
Are you talking in terms of Arteta in and out? Is that what you're?
Yeah, 100%, man. I was a month ago, 2 months ago, I was already saying the brother needs to go. I said he should have gone before he even came. But what camp are you in?
You're going to hate me. I am on the fence because I'm not Arteta out, but I'm not like, Arteta in either. I'm still undecided. I said, I'll give him till the end of the season to see what he does. But some people that I speak to about football, they say, give him till the end of next season.
Wow.
And
no, I don't know if got that long, man. I don't know if you got that long.
This season's a write-off, man. Come on.
Yeah, but come on. I can't be using that. Watch the guy who's just gone to Chelsea. What's the guy's name? Is it Tuchel?
Yeah.
Tuchel, yeah.
I bet you he'll get them performing in no time. Yeah? He'll get them performing. We've got this guy in and he's just not doing anything. He's not top 4 material. He's not top 5 material, not top 6 material, not even top 7. And I'm confused on why we still kind of say, I'll give him time. We've given managers too much time at Arsenal. So I think I'm just being realistic. We should have got rid of Arsenal. I always say this and I keep on saying this. When we got beat by Birmingham, and I think it was the League Cup, and when we got beat in that game, I remember sitting there going, wow, he needs to go. We need to get a new manager in, and we stuck with him for far too long. And then the worst thing is you brought in Emery. Come on, what's his claim to fame? Seville. I'm an Arsenal fan.
Well,
Seville's not even
Europa League.
Come on, man. I'm the Champions League, man.
Man, all I know, I went to the Emirates. Mate, I can't remember who we were playing. I was with my boy and geezer next to us. Hold this, hold it. Held this banner, Wenger out, right?
Oh,
and then all of a sudden, everyone's like, "You fucking!" And I was like, "Oh shit!" And I was just like, put it down, sort of thing. I was half expecting to be on Match of the Day, like this geezer getting beaten up in the crowd. Oh, it was volatile. I'm telling you, it was bad time.
No, it was, but the atmosphere was dead because I went to a few of the games, the last games, and it was just quiet. You know, you're sitting there, and the stadium is massive, and it's just quiet, and people are booing. I'm like, that's his kind of nudge to say, okay, get your bag tomorrow. It's been good. Jog on, son. You know, let's get someone in who's going to take us to the next stage. So I don't know, man. I'm just hoping. To be honest, I'm hoping we sack the manager straight from the hip. And I hope that we get a manager in who's a proven manager, someone that's won stuff before, you know? I'm sure we should be able to get someone in like that. There must be managers out there.
The reason Arteta's there is because we can't.
Why?
Because they won't put their hands in their pockets.
Yeah.
And like you said with Tuchel, that's a snap reaction. Abramovich thought, don't want him, get rid of him, get the next person in, pay him, and in the next transfer window, here's another 150 million. And repeat, that's it.
We're spending money.
You know?
That's the thing that gets me. We're spending money. I know we keep going on this narrative of, oh, we don't spend any money. We're spending money on players. We're spending players, contracts. Pepe, Jesus Christ, don't get me lost. Pepe's money. That money could have gone for at least 3 players. We could have 3 players in who done the job.
Zaha, man.
That's it.
Zaha would be better. 50 mil, get Zaha in. 20 mil goes to someone else, and then we're there. We're laughing.
Well, I would say everything that has been going on with Arsenal, that's one of the reasons why I've stopped watching football so much, is because it frustrates me, but it doesn't benefit me in any way because I'm not getting paid like these guys are, and more time I'm paying to watch. So it's kind of like, why do I have to put myself through that? And a question for you, Ishmael, anybody that's suffering from anxiety or mild depression, any of those sort of telltale things that everyone suffers with on a daily basis, what sort of advice would you give them to try and get themselves out of the funk and really get going again, to take their mind off of things?
It would be, first of all, remember that there's only one of you and nobody else can be you. So you have the best opportunity to be you. So go and be you. You need to find or reconnect with some of the things that you used to love doing or that you want to go and do. Go and do them. At the moment when people are in suffering with low mood, I very much understand it's difficult to get up and go. It's so easy to say, yeah, get up and go. You can go and do it. It's not easy to do. So do it with someone to begin with. Keep doing it with someone. Then when you've got to that stage, you can take it up for yourself. And you'll probably find that you can keep doing that. But it's having that someone with you at that very start to do it, because it's not someone, it's difficult to say. Everyone has a different circumstance, but in terms of falling into that stage, there's not someone that's going to hold your hand to make you fall into that stage, but someone will hold your hand and bring you up from that stage.
I'll get it.
There should. I was about to say I can't say that, but if you can identify that person that is willing to do that with you, that's a bonus. If you can't identify, then instead of stopping there, it's about inquiring who can be that person, speaking to people. Your best tool to help you come out of a low mood is speaking.
I suppose that goes back to what I think I've answered my own question there when I'm saying back in the day it wasn't thought of so much and people used to dismiss it, because I think when you're at home feeling down, you have to, back in the day, you would have to actively go somewhere to seek help. Whereas now, as Michael said, you can just be in your room and tap a couple of buttons and you can get that help. And then also people, you might not have wanted people to know that you need to seek help, and it can kind of be a private thing until you're ready to branch out and speak to people.
Absolutely. And there's, of course, the kind of avenues to speak to varying levels of qualified people. So there's helplines such as the Samaritans. There's helplines for substance misuse like Talk to Frank, AdFam, Drug Scope. There's Mind, that's a lovely charity with mental health. These people have contact numbers who you can contact more often than not 24 hours a day. And it's confidential. That information doesn't go anywhere unless you start to present as a risk to yourself or others. That's where the information is shared, and other agencies will have to get involved.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's no limit on how many times you can call them. And by calling them, those professionals can help you with the way you think about things. And it comes down to that kind of psychosocial interventions. There's also stuff like talking therapies, might be known as IAP to some, or talking therapies to others. And that can be I wouldn't say easily, but that can be accessed via your GP. Speak to your GP about it. Can you refer me to talking therapies? And if not, you can actually refer yourself to talking therapies.
I think at work, in like a corporate environment, something that I've noticed in the last couple of years is if you have a complaint or an issue, that they've often put you in the direction of someone that you can speak to outside of the company. So again, because people encounter stress in all sorts of different environments, so and anything can trigger it. So you might have a bad day at work and you're in the office and you just need someone to speak to. So I'm glad that there's a lot more opportunity, no matter where you are, to be able to get access to someone. Yeah, I think overall, like you say, it's just about talking, and that's it. So I think the main message from this conversation and to the listeners is to just talk. And I know a lot of people say it, and it isn't easy, as you say. So maybe talk to someone anonymous at the end of the phone, and then when you're strong enough and capable to, tell someone that you know. I mean, because again, when you always see it when Alcoholics Anonymous, and you see it in TV programs, I can't help you until you admit yourself that you have a problem. But sometimes people don't necessarily know that they have a problem that they need to work out that they've got.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's kind of like identifying those people and trying to urge them to get help. So I would say, from my perspective, is for everybody to be mindful of your surroundings and pay attention to your friends, family, and just reach out and ask. And that might prompt a conversation in itself. So, and then doing these podcasts, I think as well, kind of like the idea for me and Michael was to try and give back to the community in a little sense, that with our experiences and things that we've been through, to get like-minded people such as yourself, Ishmael, to come on and share your experiences to help people. Because, I mean, I don't know, I'd like to think that someone would listen to this and it would prompt them into action to go and do something about a situation that they might be in. So, I mean, that's why I'm grateful for you to come on and share all of the stuff that you have shared with us and everything else moving forward. And I think, what's your, do you work weekends? What's your plan of action? I mean, because I know you're training with Zach. What other sorts of release do you get? Do you get a day off in the week? What do you do?
I work Monday to Friday, and I have my weekends, which I'm so grateful for, because that's something I didn't have the leisure of through previous jobs and stuff. So in terms of my free time, I've picked up a new hobby, you know.
Go for it. What is it?
It's just like walking through like parks and countryside. I didn't know how much I love it. I love going out and just getting lost and then just somehow finding your way back. I've bought myself some new wellies. I've never bought wellies in my life.
They're wicked, aren't they? Wellies are the best. I live in Wellington boots if I'm not PT.
This is it.
Best on the planet.
Ugg boots, no?
Nah, Wellingtons, mate. You get yourself a nice pair and walk around the area. Everyone kind of goes, wow, you're not messing around. You say, yep, damn right.
Central London, hunter boots on, driving a 4x4.
It's good look. It's good look. No, that's cool. That's cool. So where are you walking around to? Where was the last place you went?
Last place I went was last weekend. I went to Langley Park. That's in Slough. I'd never been before, and I did get lost, but I loved it. I literally loved it.
Did you know it was there?
Yes, I knew. It was. Do you know what? It's been one of those things, like I mentioned earlier, I've always wanted to go to Langley Park and see what it's about. Because I know it's got like a nice lake there. And I love that kind of stuff. I love a nice water feature in a park. I love walking down different paths of the park, dirt track, sorry. And yeah, I didn't know it was there before. And when I went there, I was just surprised at how open it is. And then I just kept walking and walking and walking. And when you're walking, your mind, well, for me, how I felt, my mind was just freeing up.
Yeah.
I was just freeing up. It was like everything was going out and I was just taking in oxygen. Stress was going out. I was just taking in oxygen, which is only good for yourself. Anyway,
of course. Take the mask off to breathe, though, right?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, I invested in a snood, which is much more comfortable, actually.
Snood, yeah.
So, like, yes. It still is, technically a face covering, but in terms of its effectiveness, it may not be the most effective in covering, but it is comfortable, keeps you warm, and is a partial, kind of defense against kind of the virus and stuff.
You don't have to be PC, bruv. Come on.
I have been.
You tell your truth, man.
Yeah. But I didn't wear it at Langley Park.
Yeah, I thought so. I was kind of going, really? I was like,
don't get you in trouble with work,
I was
mate.
breathing in.
I know, right? No, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, man.
I'm gonna have to knock it on the head, boys, because I've got a bit. Go on, say again.
I said it's a shame. I feel like I can talk for hours. Honestly,
feel free to carry on. I need to do a little bit of work.
I like to eat. I got to eat. I'm not eating in how many hours?
Otherwise, like I say, I'm in the what I'm trying to do, Ishmael, is transition out of the corporate world.
Really?
Which I'm in at the minute, and I've been in it for a minute, and it's just it's pulling me down, if I'm honest.
I can imagine.
So it's kind of like thinking of things to do outside of that. But in order to give myself an easier ride, I shouldn't be working at this time. But I'd rather do it now than come tomorrow morning and I'm just a little bit flustered, and then kind of like your boss is ringing you like, have you done X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, haven't done it because I was talking to Ishmael, Michael, and Eugene all night. and I'll give him the link to the pod, so hopefully he'll let me off. But we can always do another one. We always invite people back, so you know, it's if you've got stuff that you want to share with us, mate, reach out. You're on our socials, and obviously you've got contact details, so mate, but if anything spectacular happens or interesting, share it with us, mate. And if you've got anything that you want to promote as well, just reach out to us, mate, and then we bounce off of each other.
I really appreciate that, and I think it's a must be penciled in a part 2. It's a must.
Yeah, cool. Well, fingers crossed we might even have the studio access, and that make it even better, because then we can have the table and it'd be a lot better. So, but guys, it's been a pleasure as always.
As always.
Signing off. Now, what I'm going to do, because I keep sneaking this, don't I? I take a picture of the screen when everyone's not looking properly. So what we'll do is I'll do a countdown, so I can get it. I'm going to count down to 3. I'll take a screenshot, and this will be the YouTube clip and also the thumbnail for the socials and stuff. All right, so 3, 2, 1, smile. I think I got 1. Yeah, we'll take that. Cool. Guys, pleasure. Signing off. Episode done.
When are you training next, Ishmael?